Okay, on the podcast tonight, the government contemplates banning homeless from rough sleeping in CBDs around the country. And when asked about it, it denies it, then it confirms it. Competent? Barely. Fumble and bumble and confuse and lie by omission. My panel, Ashley Church, and former National Minister Maurice Williamson will join us shortly. Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, proudly sponsored by the Brothers Green. Unlock the innate power of New Zealand botanicals to support your mobility. Try the Brothers Green New Zealand Move Joint Support Tonic and join over 20,000 other Kiwis experiencing easier movement. For as little as $1 a day, you too can experience the power of New Zealand hemp seed oil for your joint health. Head to brothersgreen.co and use code DG20 at the checkout for 20% off your first order. It's a good one. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch. Okay, g'day, good evening, welcome to the podcast. Please subscribe. I'm Duncan Garner. Welcome. Nice to have you along and welcome to the podcast. And when I say please subscribe, if you could, it would be really helpful. It helps us stay around. If you text my name, Duncan, to 35598, that will mean that we can send you a link. We'll send you a link back. And for $7.99, you can get the extra content. It all comes out after the podcast is released on the Friday. So that's today. So subscribers will get a special subscriber-only content today. And so if you want to see that sort of content, there's all sorts of things in there. Ask Me Anything sessions. There's slam dunks, interviews, all sorts of things. $7.99 a month. And you text my name to 3598 and it helps us stay around. Thank you so much. Right, how do you ban the homeless from rough sleeping in CBDs? The government considers this. They're considering banning homelessness. But then they deny it, then they spend the rest of the week confirming it. It's a bit complex. And here's one of the issues for me. The government has a default setting of trying to hide the controversial stuff. Or they mislead by omission. Not just on homelessness, but when it came time to pay board members more, they love the idea, they leapt at it. Then they spent hours bearing it. So why? You've just got to be transparent. Believe in yourself. Back what you're doing. Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
All right. Look, I've heard some daft ideas in my time, but this one, this might take the cake. The government's actually floating the idea of banning homelessness. So banning people sleeping on the street. Yeah, banning it. What's next? Poverty? Walking too slowly? Being too fat? I mean, what? Do we send the rough sleepers an eviction notice from the footpath? Sorry, mate, your cardboard box violates the tiny streets policy. Come on, it's not going to happen. People don't choose to be homeless. You know, some of them, when you put them in one of these homes, social welfare homes, they actually end up running away and going back on the street. But everything's gone wrong, right? They've lost the job, they've lost the family, they've lost the roof, maybe their health, maybe their mind. And now we're saying, oh, sorry, being homeless is banned. That's not compassion. That's just stone cold mean. These people are at their lowest point, right? How can we take them even further down the spiral? Let's put the boot in while we're at it, you know? It's really hard and it's complex stuff. God, what have we become? I get it's ugly and unsightly. It's a turn off for people heading to the CBD for tourists and that sort of thing. If that's our front window or our front doorstep, then sure, it needs to tidy up. Retailers hate it. No one likes it. But they're humans and they're allowed to freely go about their business in public places. In fact, the law says that. And this is a tricky space the government's getting into. Some cities pass bylaws to stop this stuff. Has it worked? Not generally. The most effective time it worked was when the last government rounded them all up and put them in motels, costing taxpayers tens of billions of bucks. That was during COVID, of course. But this was never long term. It was never going to last. There was never a decent plan. And so it is. They're out and once again on the street, and the numbers have exploded. But what a surprise. They didn't want to spend their lives in a motel. Who would? And that's why we need a decent strategy and a permanent solution. What is it? We got rid of all the mental asylums. This is a mental health issue, isn't it? We got rid of all the mental asylums. We said, let the people go out to the community. And so they have. And they're now living downtown. Moving them across a couple of suburbs simply shifts the issue, doesn't it? It solves nothing. We'll talk about that with the panel shortly, but where do you move them to? Who wants them? Ask the questions. Why are they there? What do they need to get them out of here? Many won't want to go, by the way. In fact, the CBD is their hustle. It's where they source money. It's where the action is. Stick them on the fringes and they'll be straight back. You watch. You've seen it before. You know what this homeless explosion tells us and shows us? Shows us that New Zealand is just like the other countries now. Our cities are no different to other big cities. This idea that we're still naive and innocent and the issues don't affect us here, it's wide of the mark now. This is not a rough sleeping crisis or a homelessness crisis. This is a mental health crisis. We simply don't have the facilities to look after these people. Whose fault is that? We shut them down. We said, off you go into the community, you can be trusted. If we haven't funded the problem and built the facilities, then this is what needs to happen. If we import 7,000 501s from Australia and they have $300 on them when they arrive and boot up the backside on arrival, where are they going to go and what are they going to get up to? They're going to head into the cities, the CBDs. The worst foreign policy ever to be dumped on our doorstep has made this issue much, much bigger. Many of these 501s were sent here with nothing. They were left to fend for themselves. Little wonder they hang out in the CBD or under a bridge. That's their life. We needed and need more emergency shelters, emergency homes, social houses, not some ill-defined Kiwi build policy. Labor wasted so much money and time trying to find a problem to solve with its Kiwi build debacle when it ended up building nice middle-class homes in Wanaka, not Mount Wellington. People didn't need them in Wanaka. They were homeless in Wellesley Street. And Labor can oppose this and bleat all they like, but what they did, they spent money on nice new digs, new houses, accommodation for the 500 extra refugees. This is what they did. They spent more than $180 million on supporting an extra 500 refugees coming to New Zealand. We built fancy new facilities out by the airport, new housing and additional facilities over the last 5 years. This is on top of the roughly $100 million a year it costs to service the old annual quota of refugees. So maybe we're doing more for refugees than we are our own people. And who thinks that's right? Without sounding like a misery guts, we put way more effort into foreign refugees coming here, they're through no fault of their own, than we did our own people. The digs in Mangere for those seeking asylum through refugee status, they're pretty good. They've been rebuilt, they're new, they're good. And what do our people get? There's not even a bloody men's shelter in Auckland. So the refugees arrive and they've got pretty decent digs out at Mangere, the resettlement centre. And then those that were kicked out of mental asylums, and there's also drug addiction and alcohol addiction issues with the homeless. We don't even provide them with a night shelter in Auckland. They do in the other cities, but not in Auckland. We've never got our arse into gear to do that. And at what stage do we put our concerns of our people first to resolve? So go on, try it. Well, what do we do? Send in the cops and round them all up and dump them somewhere out of sight, out of mind? I get why the government wants to take them away from the CBD. The City Rail launches next year. It's election year. Tourism's getting back to normal, and National wants these people out of the way so they don't spoil the party in downtown Auckland. But quite frankly, it's putting a crummy plaster on a broken limb. It's sticking lipstick on the pig because from what we've seen so far, they need to fund some real solutions. They're not funding real solutions. Moving them isn't funding, and moving them isn't a solution. This problem is about homelessness and addiction and mental health and so much more. This issue thumps us in the face and is confronting because maybe for so long we have not built the mental health facilities that we truly need. We haven't been nimble enough here, have we? Simply moving them is the most shallow thing I've seen and heard for a long time. Oh, we're going to move them around the corner to Grey Lynn. Great! It doesn't solve a thing. I've spoken to a number of homeless over the years. One came from the home of a very well-known New Zealander, actually, who had long since given up on his son, this young man. He was scared, he was worried, he hated the street. And I've also spoken to other homeless who know no different. But to stay in the CBD, it's where they do their hustle, and others stay in there because it's populated, so they can actually ask for money and also sleep knowing there are plenty of eyes on them. Safer to be amongst people than in a black corner on a dark city fringe alley. And you know what really gets me? They're not even straight about it. Oh, no. It's all that polished corporate spin like community safety, public orders, keeping our cities clean. Yeah, right. Translation is make the poor invisible. Luxon couldn't lie straight in bed at night on this one. He denied it initially. What? No, what? What do you mean? Then he had to go and find out what's happening in his own government. Hopeless. Remember Tauranga? They tried it. They went really hard. They'd fines, trespass orders, the lot. We'll clean up the CBD, they said. And what happened? They went backwards. Backlash, chaos, embarrassment. They quietly shelved it because it failed. They couldn't move anyone. You can't ticket someone who's got nothing. You can't trespass a bloke from a bench when he's got nowhere else to go and the bench is home. And here's the real kicker, Mr. Luxon. Listen to this. There's no men's shelter in Auckland. Not one. None. There is in Wellington, but in Auckland, if you go out at night and go looking for it, you'll be walking around forever because there's no men's shelter. Wellington's got one, Christchurch has got one, Dunedin's got one, but Auckland, our biggest city with all the issues highlighted in a much bigger way than the other cities, and our economic engine is huge, and there is nothing. So where do you expect these blokes to go when there's no men's shelter? The bushes, a car park, the back of a bus stop. Now, I walk through the city now and then, and I see them rolled up in blankets, curled up against walls, hiding from the rain, and we're talking about banning that. Hey, we're going to ban the shit life that you've got now. If you really want to fix homelessness, you've got to go where it starts. Housing issues, addiction issues, mental health, poverty, the works. It's messy, it's hard, it's expensive, it's wraparound stuff, but that's the job. You can't tidy up failure with a bylaw, Mr. Luxon. You can't PR spin poverty out of existence, and you can't say we've solved the motel crisis because, well, you say you've moved them into other places. You don't know. They might be back on the street. You want fewer homeless people. Let's build some homes in. Let's build a night shelter. Fund the services. I think it's outrageous that we're saying let's ban the homeless and not provide a night shelter. If we provide a night shelter that's open in the evening for them to go and lie down in, then they get off the streets immediately. So why don't we do that? Fund or part fund, alongside the community and business, a night shelter for these people. And I guarantee you, half of them come off the street just like that. I just don't want to moan and groan here. I want to give you a solution, Mr. Luxon. These are people. They're not problems. They're people. We need to fix these issues and these people. Hiding them away from society is completely farcical.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Right, my panel joins me now. Ashley Church and Maurice Williamson, of course. Guys, lots to talk about. G'day, nice to see you.
G'day.
Hey, g'day, mate.
Ashley, I might kick it off with you today. The homelessness situation. It seems like the government might want to ban it, or try to ban it, or try to move it. It's a really tricky one, this, eh?
It's interesting.
Go.
I was just going to say, so it's very interesting. So there's all sorts of recriminations at the moment too around what the government's spending and the focus that it's actually putting on this, and it harks into this issue that I always get really upset about, which is this idea that how much you spend on a problem is commensurate to what you're likely to achieve in respect of a solution. By which I mean that the theory is that if you spend more, that you're going to get better outcomes. Now, that if anybody believes that should have been blown completely out of the water over the 6 years of the Ardern government, when they spent something like $89 billion for pretty much no outcome or achievement in anything. And I've always been of the view that it's not about how much you spend, it's about how cleverly you spend it. No. And so if you look at what the government's doing in the homelessness space, and this is a policy which is part of a package of things that they're currently doing. They're actually making some real traction, and I pulled some figures this morning just to talk about this. But if you look at the, for example, with the emergency housing and motels, that's dropped 64% over last year. 64% fewer people are in emergency housing and hotels. Now, you might say to yourself, okay, well, that's because the government's no longer putting them into them. But in fact, that's not the case, because we're also finding that there's been an increase in the number of people. Well, the number of people in social housing is around about the same at 37%. But there's been an increase into transitional housing. So what that tells you, if you read those figures in tandem, is that the government's basically taking people out of housing, which is for emergency purposes, and putting them into housing which is more sustainable over a period of time. And that's a good thing. And they're doing that without having to spend additional money, because they're doing it cleverly, and they're doing it within the context of the spending that they're making in this space. This rough speaking thing's a little bit more interesting. So if you look at the figures over September 2024, and I'm sure that Maurice will add to this as well, there was 426 people rough sleeping in Auckland. By January 2025, that was 653. The problem with that figure is that's got nothing to do with the economy. It's very little to do with the economy. If you look into who these people actually are, they tend to fit into two broad categories. A lot of them have got mental health issues, and a lot of them have got addiction issues. So it's not about anything that the government's specifically doing per se. It's about some social issues that have to be resolved, which have actually got nothing to do with the housing crisis. And in fact, a lot of these people, when you put them into emergency housing, 2 or 3 days in emergency housing, and they leave and they go back onto the street. So but for me, this issue is bigger than just simply saying, hey, they want to get people off the street, out of sight, out of mind. It's a much larger issue, and I actually think it's good work.
No, well said. I wonder, Maurice, if it is a look into our mental health system. That you've got 600 odd people out there, and I've talked to some of these people myself, and I've interviewed a couple of them. They go into these homes, and then they're out within 2 or 3 days. They it's not for them. I wonder if it paints a picture of our mental health system, Maurice.
Well, it does, and Ashley was 100% hitting the nail bang on the head here. We used to have mental hospitals where people would King Seat and so on, where people with really serious mental issues, and that was considered evil because we were stigmatizing them and so on. Well, these people are some people that cannot cope in the normal world environment. And I know, because I've actually chatted to a few people. I've walked up Queen Street and seen people urinating and defecating on the footpath. And Queen Street, the bottom of Queen Street's just become ghastly. And no wonder Smith and Co. and lots of others have been closing their doors. I think 1 in every 8 shops now is empty, and others are looking to close. And some of them would just have no bar of ever being put into government-provided accommodation. That's not how they live. That's not how I roll, said one guy. I don't roll that way. You're not forcing me behind bars of a... And I keep thinking, well, I'm sorry, but the property owners and the public who want to shop and eat in restaurants, they've also got to be able to roll there. And being threatened and go cave your head in, you prick, and all this stuff is just not acceptable. So we do have, I mean, I'm not just saying let's take them all around the back and shove them in some concrete bin and close the lid. We've got to find a way to solve it. But you cannot just have them freely lying on the gutters and syringe hanging, one guy with a syringe hanging out of his arm the other day, just hanging out of his arm. Yeah. He'd obviously finished but not taken it out. So they've got to be dealt with and put to other locations or somehow, because it's not acceptable. And the actual crime that they are committing, they are literally committing crimes against members of the public who are now frightened to go there.
But where do you move them to? But what do you do with them? Do you just transport the problem to a suburb nearby? I mean, there's no night shelter in this city. Auckland doesn't have a night shelter. It's remarkable.
Yep. Well, I would have thought you have to go back to halfway where we used to be. I remember going past the old mental asylums in Carrington. There was that whole mental asylum there, and there was one out at the South Auckland and King Seat, I think it was called, and so on. They were huge, and there was people who were like out of the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that literally couldn't function in your real world. Well, we thought that was wrong to stigmatise and treat people like that. Probably true for many of them, but some of the hardcore ones, we've gone too far and left them to their own device, and it's not actually fair to them having left them out, having to fend for themselves.
I wonder if that's a big thing to tackle. Actually, it's complex, as we've all discussed here. It's just not simple as saying, right, we're going to lift them up and put them here. Do you think the government's bitten off more than they can chew on this? Because Luxon's position was initially, we're not doing anything, and then by the end of the week, we're going to do something. He wasn't overly honest, was he, initially?
Well, I don't think they've bitten off more than they can chew, because I think the approach they're taking is reasonably sound. And as I say, with respect to all of the other emergency housing stuff, putting aside this issue of rough sleeping, I think what they're doing is a qualified success story.
Yeah.
In respect of this stuff, I mean, this is Maurice is absolutely right. This relates back to when we started to close down these facilities 15, 20 odd years ago. I think it goes back quite a long way.
It goes a long way back.
And so if you're going to roll these problems back, you're probably talking about a trajectory which is maybe not as long, but it's going to take us a long period of time to go back. And so that firstly, the question is, do you re-establish these facilities for people who are, the ones that Maurice describes, who couldn't be anywhere else or shouldn't be anywhere else? What form do they take? What do they look like? But then you get into the whole issue, and this is the same issue we have with schools at the moment, which is if you're going to do that, what's the philosophy that drives them? So it's one thing to say, hey, you would have these facilities, but if they're just going to become another hotbed for ideology and applying the same sorts of things that we've been doing in other parts of society, they're not going to achieve anything. Because my argument's always been with, and this isn't just relating to rough sleeping, it relates to a whole range of things, problems that we've got in our society, is they relate to the decline in moral standards and social standards that have been going on for 40 odd years. Yeah. So if you're going to repair society, then you also have to, in hand with that, bring back some of those standards, and I just can't see an appetite.
But you look at Auckland,
either of the major political parties.
Yeah, you look at Auckland though. So you've got this huge investment, Maurice, with the rail track underneath the ground now. So you've got a subway basically there, an amazing facility that's about to open. You've got all that investment downtown, huge investment, billions of dollars investment in new buildings going up, all sorts of developments. And it's largely 500 people are ruining it. And so people stay away. Tourists go, oh my God. New Zealanders go, I'm not going there. And so all that investment doesn't come to much because we've got this issue. How do you get them out of there?
Well, I was first elected here in 1987, so it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And city downtown was the place to go for the restaurants and the nightlife and the bars, and it was fantastic. And now, I promise you, I go dog walking and people want to chat to me about things, and I say, how often do you go into the central city? Would never go there anymore. Not even interested. The suburban centres now, like Sylvia Park or Botany Town Centre, where you can go to all your shopping. There are plenty of restaurants that you can go to that are in the neighbourhood. And I felt unsafe. People just say, I come out of the railway station downtown or out of the bus station, and I just feel unsafe with what's going on down there. And so that's why you're seeing so many businesses close their doors. And so the line that I keep running with every person I can ever get them to listen to me is, with every right you have, there's a responsibility you must have as well. You've got to have the balance. Now, these people say it's my right to lie here on the footpath and do what I like and you can't move me. Well, I'm sorry, but you've taken away the rights of a shitload of people to go shopping and entertain and enjoy the downtown part of the city. So I'm surprised that Heart of the City aren't driving a harder bloody line on this, because they should be. And I know a lot of retailers down there. I talked to a group of them the other day. They're just beside themselves.
Tauranga tried it, actually. Didn't work.
They tried.
Yeah, Tauranga tried.
I wasn't aware. What
They tried a few years ago.
Taking them off the streets?
Yeah, a few years ago they tried. You couldn't sit within 5 minutes of a doorway, which basically meant you couldn't sit on the street. You see, because there's doorways everywhere. It failed.
What happened?
It failed miserably. I mean, these people just stayed where they were, and the council decided, oh God, we can't win this.
Yeah,
they pulled the pin.
As I say, and I'm sorry to be a scratch record, but it's because this is just a symptom of a whole range of social issues which beset our society. And if you're going to fix them, you've got to fix all of them. You can't just take a bit and say we're going to fix just this bit and leave the rest of it as it is. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Luxon?
I guess you can summarise it by, there's no easy solution, but they have to find one.
Yeah. We don't know what we're doing here, but we're gonna do it anyway. What about Luxon?
No, I didn't quite say that.
No, but it's true though. I mean, it's such a hard one. I mean, what they did during COVID, they got all of them off the street, didn't they? They did. They chucked them into motels and every place they could find, and they spent billions on it, didn't they?
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, what about the Prime Minister? He was a bit flat-footed on it initially, wasn't he? Well, Ashley.
Yeah, to be fair, it is such an intractable issue. It's one of those things that you sort of get caught on the fly, and amongst talking about your trade trips to Europe and other places, and it's so I think it's probably more an example that he wasn't informed on what was going on, and then his apparent reversal later in the week was when he was informed on what the initiatives were being taken. So I can forgive him that. Because, as I say, when I look at what Bishop's doing in that broader housing space and the initiatives that have been taken by other ministers, I'm actually quietly confident that they seem to have the lie of the land, and they seem to understand what they're doing. And in respect of that larger issue of emergency housing and some of those intractable issues that we had for 6 years under Labor, all the numbers are going in the right direction.
I reckon.
So I'm okay with that.
I reckon you've been too kind to him. What you say is he had to find out what was going on in his government.
Pretty much.
There's always a great little go-to when you're a minister, and I used to use it all the time. Question from some journalist here crossing the bridge: are you considering, say, until the cabinet has made a decision on any issue, I am not going to breach cabinet confidentiality and discuss what is talked about in that room?
That's good.
I do remember you saying that. It was very frustrating. We could never get anything out of you.
Leave it at that. I know it's very frustrating for the media, but you've covered yourself. Until we've made a decision, I'm not going to talk about something hypothetical that may or may not be discussed in the confidential nature of a cabinet room.
Which is code for I don't know?
No, it's code for no. In many cases, there's a massive debate been raging for several weeks, and we still haven't got it bloody resolved. I can remember 2 or 3 issues where, because a lot of people say, I hear people say, a lot of journalists say, "Oh, you were part of the government that did that," and I keep saying, if you only knew how many times National agreed to something that I was adamantly opposed to and hated it. But because of the collective responsibility of cabinet, you had to fight your fight in the room. The vote was taken. You lost 18-2 on one occasion. Ruth Richardson was the only other one to back me on something I'd put up. 18-2 loss. And you have to go out the next day and sell the other light like you're absolutely behind it. And I had a talkback radio show on Radio Pacific, and it was hilarious as one thing. It was to do with superannuation rates and the surcharge. And I had fought strongly for the other side, lost came out of cabinet, punched the wall, so angry, so upset, but you're not allowed to say a word.
You get sacked for that.
Go on the bloody radio station the following Sunday and spent 3 hours telling what a great policy the government had implemented and how fantastic it was, and how good it will be for you. And my wife said to me when I walked in after the radio station, she said, "You two-faced." And I said, well, if I'd gone out and said what I really think, I'd be gone from cabinet that afternoon.
Yeah, you'd be sacked. Hey,
Keith Holyoake had a wonderful statement. He said he stayed in the National Party because he agreed with up to 80% of what it stood for.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to get it to the 80, but I'm still in that camp.
Yeah, I reckon you were probably 55, 60.
Good argument.
55, 60.
55, 60.
Yeah. Erica Stanford, again, we always talk about her. Actually, there's not a week goes by that we don't. When she pulled that the treaty obligations out of the Board of Trustees considerations that they must take into consideration, I am a Board of Trustee member, it takes the weight off your shoulders because you can focus directly on what you need to focus on. I thought, actually, it was a brilliant move from her, a strategically brilliant move because it forces Labor to say, well, put it back in, you know?
So we had quite a robust discussion. I think it was pre-Morris, PM, a robust discussion about 3 or 4 months ago about the leadership prospects within the National Party, because at that stage there was still some suggestion that they might roll Luxon and put somebody else in. And Eric Stanford was very much in the mix. And I remember at the time being highly critical of her. And one of the major reasons I was critical is the way that she had responded to that question that Hosking had put to her about this very issue. And I felt at the time that she had mishandled it, and that her response was not in keeping with what, the sorts of behaviour that Morris was talking about before. I've done a 180 degree on it, I have to say, over the last 3 or 4 months, primarily around the performance that she's achieving in her portfolio. She's achieving some outstanding results. Now, this issue is interesting because she's come full circle now. She's come back. She's now decided she's taking it out. If you remember at the time, the argument was that Goldsmith was working on treaty principle issues across all legislation, and that she didn't want to do something that was outside of that. She's obviously now decided that it's okay to do so, and the reasons she's given are reasonable. But I think overall, again, and I've just paid Bishop a compliment regarding what he's doing. Same thing here. The results that are starting to be achieved in her space are extraordinary. This is exactly the right move to have taken. I put her now right near the top of potential leadership of that party.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, it's just hard to overlook it. You can't overlook it now because not only is she making changes, the changes are having an effect, and it's not always the case with ministers can put in changes or whatever, but no one sees any result. You are seeing results, and she reports. She's unashamedly reporting the results back as well, and skewering Hipkins on the way through by saying he put the treaty clause in there, and then backed it up with nothing, and left it there for boards to grapple with. I think it was a brilliant move.
Before Morris does, if you want to deal with treaty issues, because I see there's still a question hanging over how they should deal with treaty issues and how they should give effect to giving, making sure that they deal with treaty issues. Introduce civics. Do what the Americans do. Introduce civics as a topic. Have issues around Māori history, issues, if you want to, around tikanga, but also talk about the British and talk about what happened over in 1840 and after that, and talk about that from both sides. It's okay to talk about colonisation in a negative way, but also talk about the good things that came as a result of that.
But isn't the best thing you can do get them to read and write properly, and then they get a job? Isn't the best thing you can do is to get their education status up, and then you've met the treaty obligations?
But the two things aren't mutually exclusive, Duncan. You can do both. You can have reading and writing. You can put an emphasis on all that stuff that she's doing. I don't think civics is a bad idea.
No, I think
at the moment we've got this one-sided narrative where we're telling kids one story, and that it's colonization's evil. It's been the cause of all of the problems for Māori in society, and if we could reverse what had happened, then somehow we'd turn into this utopia, which is simply not true. What civics would do, done properly, is it would give us the opportunity to give kids the full gambit, the good, the bad, the ugly of both sides, and be honest about what our history actually involves.
I'm not so sure we're not close to being there already. If you read the history curriculum, it is very broad. It is all about world stuff. So we'll learn about the Roman Empire because it's an important thing that happened in the world and what happened after that. And then we'll learn about the sort of world wars and how there were sort of fascist dictatorships that thought they could rule. So that's important for people to learn.
Context,
But there's also some stuff about our history and the whalers and the Chinese coming for the gold rushes and so on. Things that are important as to how we got to where we are. As it has been, it has all been centric around colonisation bad, Māori is everything, you talk about anything else, you're evil. And I just take my hat off to her. But Duncan, I have to say it goes so much further than just education that this needs to be dealt with.
Yep.
I had a real problem at the council recently, well, it was a year ago now. We were appointing a new chair of water care. Water care is $1 billion operation. And one of the nominations that had been put up was a Maori guy from Auckland who was on a number of boards already. But one of them was a guy called Jeff Hunt who had run the government telecommunication systems Cordia, and I had a lot of time for him. He's very capable, very able. So I moved an amendment to the recommendation that we go with Jeff Hunt. The number of people in the room voted for it, so it got passed through a democratic process, and we appointed Jeff Hunt. The moment we did that, the Independent Maori Statutory Board at Council, which is not elected, it's set up under the legislation but not elected, went straight off to the court, said we had taken no account of knowledge of tikanga, which is what Nanaia had stuck in almost by sort of subterfuge, and it said you must take account of their knowledge of tikanga when appointing. Now, you're appointing someone to a massive big infrastructure company doing billions of dollars. I want to know they know how to read a balance sheet. I want to know how to get value for money on their spending. I don't actually care if they're Chinese, Indian, or Romanian. I care about what their talents are for what we're seeking. Anyway, off to court. Jeff Hunt had to step down as chairman. We had a massive battle, but finally we got it back across the line. And now the current government have said they're taking that clause out as part of their local government. And they're going to get rid of that.
And what did that cost us? As a delay, and what was the productivity cost of that? Huge, you know?
Well, it cost you with both sides, actually, because the legal fees for the Maori Statutory Board would have been paid by ratepayers, and the council fighting our side of it was paid for by ratepayers.
Do we need the Statutory Board?
Well, unfortunately, it's in legislation, and you've got to find any particular government that would prepare to say no. Now, the problem is that it got worse than this. We ended up with a big debate, should we allow for Maori wards in Auckland? And I said, well, I'm okay as long as that gets rid of the IMSB, the Independent Maori Statutory Board, and now people can vote if they want Maori wards or not. And the answer was, no, we're going to stick with the Maori Statutory Board, but we'll add on top of that Maori wards. And I thought, we're supposed to be a country of equality, of equal outcomes, of equal opportunities, and so on. And now we're going to be saying to Māori, not only are you covered in legislation where you'll have people on every committee and making decisions. I can tell you my committee, the sort of expenditure and revenue committee, I lost several votes because the council laws voted by a slim majority for yes, and then the IMSB members voted no, and I lost.
No,
and they were not elected, they were not accountable,
they were not
answerable to anybody.
It's almost a veto. I mean, this government should... I think the public expected the government to deal with things like this. Ashley, I reckon they did.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And I think for the first couple of years, for whatever reason, whether they thought New Zealand First and ACT were going to be in this space and they weren't going to have to be, but the first couple of years I think that they pretty much dragged their feet and did nothing. I'm certainly seeing signs over the last few months so that they're starting to move, maybe reluctantly, maybe strategically they're moving into this space and starting to, and this thing with Erica Stanford's a really good example where some action's finally been taken. Look, you'd have to assume, and Maurice will know this better than you and I, Duncan, you will have to assume that there are some pretty frank conversations going on in the caucus room around where they're sitting in the polls at the moment. They would be looking at all of the various different contributing factors. This is clearly one, and they'll be saying to themselves, maybe we need to be more proactive in this.
Parents will love this. I mean, the feedback I've had has been enormous already on this on the treaty stuff.
It's massive because I tell you what's been so crippling out our way is the school principals have had to say to the parents, I'm sorry, but it's a legislative requirement. I've got no option. And so they've been able to, even if they were one of the groups that wanted to do it, they've been able to hide behind it if they weren't. Now, the good news is if that comes out of being a mandate, you still, if you're a local school and your board chooses to do that, then you can. No one's saying you're not allowed to. But now it's voluntary and it's up to you, the parents and the board and the principal, to decide if it's worthwhile or not. Which is, I think, we get that all the time. You hear, oh, I'm sorry, we just can't do it because the law stops you.
You know, when I stood for the board, everyone put their pictures in. There were 30 of us going for these positions, and everyone said the Toi Utility and the Pacifica Achievement and all. No, I didn't put any of that in. I just said I want to be very careful about social media and the influence on kids, and I'm going to go for excellence and everything. But I never said I'm a treaty man or I'm a Pacific man or this, because it wouldn't have been honest of me, and so I ended up getting the top vote. The parents don't want it either. The parents just want it straight down the barrel. And so anyway, science, actually, we'll talk science, then I want to talk about the police officers with you, Maurice. Science is back.
Yes, so this is, and I'm just going to find the documents. So you might remember a couple of years ago that there was quite a bit of noise around what the Marsden Fund was doing. Not just the Marsden Fund, there are some other contributory funds for science funding as well, but the Marsden Fund in particular had gone from being, as recently as 2008, a pretty credible agency in terms of the way that it allocated funding to science projects and research, to a woke cesspool of nonsense by 2023, 2024.
Oh,
let me give you an example.
Please.
So in 2008, 88% of all grants from the Marsden Fund were going to science funding. The remainder of those, 8% to humanities, you could probably argue that, 3% to Māori, 1% to identity issues, and no funding at all to political issues. And as I would argue, there probably shouldn't have been, because it's a science fund. By 2024, so by the way, that's about 1 in 10, just over 1 in 10 projects were non-science related. By 2024, the science funding had dropped to 73%, humanities 7%, Māori 17%, identity issues 3% and 1% to political issues. So by that stage, about 1 in 4 research projects from the Marsden Fund, which is a science fund, were going to things that had nothing to do with science. Shane Reddy came in. This is Shane Reddy who got moved out of health a year or so back, and Simeon Brown put into his place, got put into this space. And I have to say that he's done some great work. So this year, we've just got the figures out now, 92% for science. What a surprise. 6% to humanities, 3% to Māori, nothing to identity issues, and nothing to political issues.
That's right.
That's a fantastic reversal.
Yep.
It's exactly right in a really short space of time. That's exactly what should have been happening. So again, it just harks back to what we just talked about, that I think that the government's recognising that these are issues that resonate with the average Kiwi, and these sorts of results are the sort of should have seen them 2 years ago, but the fact that we're seeing them now is good enough for me.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I reckon the Nats, and I've been critical, I'm critical of all sides really, but the Nats are starting to act in a very common sense way. They're starting to do what they said they'd do, Maurice. And I reckon you just start to see, and actually you just mentioned it too, it's starting to emerge that not enough of them are doing what Erica's doing, but enough of them are starting to make sense now, Maurice.
To an extent, I think they're seeing the writing on the wall. There should be no way that Labour, along with the rest of the claptrap bunch of loonies, should be even on the scoreboard.
What do you really mean, Maurice?
Should I tell you what I really think?
Go for it.
But of course, you've got the United Maori Party, as they put themselves. In the end, they shouldn't actually be in contention in any political poll, because they wrecked the country and did so much damage. They're in contention. In fact, in many polls, they are slightly ahead. And that is because National, along with the two coalitions, sort of abandoned the playing field, and sort of what we were going to do and what we were going to sort out and what we were going to deal to wasn't happening. Now, I think I've used it once before, but I'll repeat to you again. One particular phrase I had thrown at me that it just rings in my ears over the years is when we went into the briefings in 1990 after having won the 1990 election, Graham Scott from Treasury told us how bad things were, how serious the books were in trouble, how much the Bank of New Zealand was going to need to get it out of it. And then he used a line which I don't think a public servant should have ever used, but he said, if you want to be in contention at the election in 3 years' time, and we were so cockatoo because we'd just won, so who cares about the election in 93? If you want to be in contention, you're going to have to take tough calls now. You can't even wait for a few months. You will need to take some tough calls now. And everyone goes, you feel the tingle running up your spine because you run out of runway. If you start doing some really good stuff now, the benefits will be hard to track and see them flow through by October next year. So better late than never, I guess. But it would have been better earlier, and the results coming through to show the voters that this stuff works.
And I reckon they're lucky. With Erica, though, aren't they? Because Erica has shown them that they can get some quick results and some good results. But isn't her success just showing up how bloody hopeless most of the others are? And if they might be feeling like they're working hard, but Erica's not only working hard but getting results, and she's showing them up, Ashley.
Well, yes, there is a risk in all of this, though, and I'm sure this is also being taken into account in their planning. And so in 2017, and I assume that this was Stephen Joyce and some of the other strategists within the party, the National Party's strategy was to mop up basically all of the right wing opposition, and they did it. They did it hugely effectively.
Yeah.
And so the result of that was that they got, I think, 47% of the vote, which was miles ahead of the 34%, I think, that Labor got. And even with the Labor and Greens vote combined at that election wouldn't have been enough to knock National out. But they didn't get quite enough to get over the 50%. And New Zealand First came along and basically was able to do a coalition deal with Jacinda, and the effect of that was obviously now history. So National will also be aware of that at the moment. They'll be concerned that on the one hand, yes, it's important that they resonate with what the electorate wants, and if this is where the electorate wants to go, that they need to be putting this stuff into their policies. On the other hand, what they don't want to do is to so decimate ACT's and New Zealand First support that when we come to the next election, that there's not enough support for them to form a government. So it's a bit of a tightrope that they've got to walk.
I want to give you what I think is almost a counterfactual to that.
Sure.
I actually think right now, for the first time I've seen, you would never be worried quite so much about your votes going to the other side. What you would be worried about right now is votes going to the little parties on either side of it.
Yeah. And you look at Te Pāti
New Zealand First could be a 12%, I believe, could be a 12%. ACT could be a 10 or a 12 as well, because National could just drop and drop. Because the other side is so ghastly, and I mean, I saw a little meme the other day with a picture of Christopher Luxon sitting at his desk, and up behind him there was on the wall a picture of Chris Hipkins, and underneath it's got Employee of the Month.
Yes.
Because the launching of the capital gains tax could have done nothing more than help National stay on the Treasury bench's side. In the past, you're always saying if we're losing votes, we're dead. The other side win, we're out, they are government. I think now, instead of one huge big tower and two small pieces on either side, you could see them getting closer. They'll never get exactly level, but you'll get more a three-way split.
Winston could do a job share as Prime Minister.
I agree with that with one really important caveat, and that's Winston Peters. And the reason I say that is because and the wily old dog that he is, and Winston loves being in a position where he's got power and he's the tail wagging the dog. I could see, I'm not saying he'll do it, but I could see a scenario where he holds an olive branch out to Labor and says, I will help you into government. But this is my list of conditions. And that's the concern.
Look, I'm happy to bet Duncan's total salary for a year that won't happen.
You're not betting much.
You're right.
What I'll do, I will bet your fee for being on the show. Both of your fees for being on the show.
Oh, it only doubled recently too.
I know, I tripled it. Yeah. Hey, but Winston, I don't think Winston.
He wouldn't go that way again. I can promise you.
He said not where Hipkins is there. He has left a little door open, but not for Hipkins. The latest poll, Roy Morgan, is interesting because it shows that National actually. The right sits ahead of the left now, quite not comfortably, but with a reasonable margin because the Māori Party's collapsed. Because people don't vote for losers, they don't vote for disunity. Maurice, do they? They're not interested.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. Absolutely correct.
A couple of things in this that we need to be a little bit careful of, though. So great result, happy with that. Happy to see that if there was an election held the day of this poll, that National would have had 63 seats, and or National and its coalition partners on the other side would have had 57. That's all good. But when you drill down into the results, there's a couple of things to be concerned about. So for starters, National didn't move at all, sat unchanged on 32%, so they haven't gone
as
up.
Usual.
ACT's actually dropped by 1%. New Zealand First has increased by 1.5 to 9.5. But the two things I was worried about, one of them is Labor had actually gone up 2 points, so which in my view shouldn't be happening.
Māori Party.
And the Māori Party had dropped by 3 points to 2.5%, and it's that last bit of the result that's made the difference to these. So yes, the Māori Party's in disarray at the moment. You could argue that the public's looking at that and saying they don't want a bar of it. It's not completely out of the question, though, between now and the election, that they could get their act together, they could present a more acceptable face, and that the three parties on the left could present themselves in a way that people would be prepared to vote for them. So this party ain't over yet.
Can I do my little flinty-faced bit again? For me, the one thing that absolutely is central to everything we're debating is to do with fiscal responsibility, stopping accumulating debt, because the debt mountain and the debt servicing is now at 9 billion. And National said before the election, Labor was spending money like a drunken sailor. The debt mountain was accumulating at such a rate they would be taking a sledgehammer to it. And I was going, yes, that's the only way you can get a good quality education system, good quality health system, and so on, is to not be spending a bigger chunk than that on just servicing the
you
debt
can't.
you've
You
acquired.
can't.
So you start living within your means. But the problem is, Duncan, if you look at the 2025 budget
Yeah.
that Nicola Willis produced, there are beautiful graphs in there where the spending track is exactly the same track as
Yeah.
under Labor,
Yeah.
45% growth and going up,
Yeah.
where the debt accumulation is going up, another 100 billion of debt accumulation. And you keep saying they didn't take a sledgehammer to it, they didn't even take a teaspoon to it.
No, and this is the
Everything
Graham
else
Scott.
we can argue, whether we need more police and we need to fund law and order, whether we need, all of that comes back to proper fiscal management, and that requires taking some bloody tough calls.
And they haven't done it and they needed the Graham Scott. They needed that message to resonate, and they didn't get one. I don't know if the public service isn't like it used to be, I suppose. But they yesterday at 5 o'clock they borrowed another $500 million. Every Thursday in the afternoon they switch another 500 million. It happens every week. They're not very different at all to the other guys.
It's a pretty impressive credit card. There is one caveat to this, which Maurice will be aware of, and that is that when you talk about total debt or quantum of debt, you have to factor into that over time, inflation erodes the value of your debt in the same way as it does the value of your assets. So over a period of, say, 10 years, if the economy doubles in size, which it potentially will, then the proportion of debt to GDP, even though it might have increased, can potentially be actually lower than it was now. So, and I don't know what those figures look like, Maurice. You've probably looked at them, but it's
I've actually got them on my screen right here, and I can tell you the thing that still makes your blood curdling is when you go to the line debt servicing costs for that year.
It's 10 billion.
That's money. If you had $9 billion that you could put into some more healthcare services, if you had $9 billion you could put into more curriculum material and teacher training, you'd be changing the outcome of New Zealand. But you set $9 billion off to the banks because it's sitting there and it's growing.
What's it projected to be as a percentage of GDP in 10 or so years' time?
It's still got seriously big percentages on it compared to what was got. We were going to bring it right, curve the thing right back down, and go to the 2025 budget book, because it's blood curdling to read that. We haven't done what National did in 1990. Is just absolute. We took some of the most unpopular, hated for what we did, and the results started to make the country boom.
$9 billion is half the health system. Is half the health funding for 1 year. It is more than half of the education system, and it is a third of the New Zealand super bill that goes out every year. It's a third of that. So it is massive. And if you were to buy new drugs, cancer drugs, with that money, you wouldn't be able to buy them because you'd have to be inventing them at that rate. So it's pretty it's not impressive. Hey?
What's the old saying? 9 billion here, 9 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking serious money.
Yeah, and we are. The police officers, Maurice, you want to mention this? The police officers and the drink driving.
Well, I just was thinking to myself, the thing about police, more than any other government agency, is trust. And the public's trust that our police are honest and decent and genuine. And when we were doing the merger of police and traffic services at the beginning of the 90s, there was a big stumbling block, which I think we got wrong. And that was police were one of the most highly regarded, highly respected, highly liked part of our society, along with doctors and others. And politicians were second to bottom after used car salesmen. But traffic police were down there at the bottom. And you were going to migrate two codes. One where they were loved. If you were being raped or beaten, the cop would come in and save you, and he was forever the family hero. Or that's the bastard over there that gave me 3 parking tickets in the last month.
Yeah.
But we merged them. Now, the problem is we've got one police force now. To have the deputy of that going up on pedophilia and bestiality charges on his own work computer, when everybody knows whatever you do on a work computer will be on the hard drive forever and forensically be able to be extracted. So you have to be somehow nuts to think you can use a work computer for that. But now you've got 120 police who were falsifying breath testing. Fortunately, it wasn't they were going out and testing people and saying no or whatever. It was just for saying, I have done them. And they were driving along in their cars. The GPS shows them driving along, pressing the red button, another test. Pressing the red button, I've just done another test. Pressing the red button, I've just done another test. And I'm sorry, that will begin to erode public trust.
Totally, yeah.
And the one thing that makes our society function probably more than anything else is that we hold a very strong trust for the services our police provide, and that they're honest and they abide by the rules that they even have to set.
You know, there are more than 10,000 of them, and I've had a bit of engagement with them in recent months and weeks and years, and I find them largely pretty damn good. You know, and I'm not saying that to piss in their pockets. I'm saying that because, you know, I come across them all the time in this job, and they're pretty decent, and there's not that many rogues. Because you look at the media, I can name 100 rogues.
I have to say, because I occasionally infract, if that's a word. Yes. And when I deal with them, I have to say they're pretty decent people. Maurice just reminded me when he was talking about the merging of the old MOT with police in the 90s, and I think it was the guy from United Future, I've forgotten his name, was the minister at the time.
This was Banks was Minister of Police.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, so I was on the Napier City Council at the time, and Napier City Council was one of those councils around the country. There was about 10 of them that operated their own traffic department instead of using the MOT. Yep. And I remember when this was being proposed, and you're right, it was Banks, and Banks came and basically said that they were looking at merging the whole thing. And I remember Napier Council being up in arms and saying, no way, you're not going to tell us what to do. We're going to keep our department. And then I remember he added to that, you're more than welcome to keep them, but you can't keep the fines income. And I think we said to them, would you like them to deliver to you on Monday? As soon as the idea of not being able to keep the money that came from fines income was factored into the equation, none of these councils around.
Yeah, I remember when that happened. I remember my father calling them the Gestapo. The Gestapo will get you. You know.
But a really good part of the solution would have been to combine a whole lot of back office functions, comms, vehicle fleets, training centres, and so on. But to have still kept two separate entities at the public-facing end of the issue, because you can't combine one group that are just hated beyond belief, the traffic cop who gave you a speeding ticket and a parking ticket last week, and the guy that's there to save you from being beaten up or stolen from or raped or whatever.
Hey, just let me wrap this up with the economy. Just a quick touch on the economy. So the unemployment's at an 8-year high, although it's retrospective, right? So we're talking the last 3 months. So an 8-year high unemployment, but I reckon the economic shoots are starting just to show through. I'm not here to be positive or negative, but I think that there's some positive signs, Ashley. Just emerging.
Oh, look, in a very unscientific way. So let me stress that in advance. In a very unscientific way, for the first time in about 3 years, there's just a feeling at the moment that things are on the improve. And I don't know whether it's the combined effect of dropping interest rates and, you know, some positive things happening in the economy. But this maybe it is weather. But whatever it is, I'm actually starting to feel now some confidence that 2026 is actually going to be. I wouldn't say it's going to be a boomer year, but it's going to be certainly a much better year than 2025 and 2024. Yeah, you're right. This is an historic figure. This unemployment rate. I suspect that'll come down quite quickly once the economy starts to fire again. But yeah, I think there's reason to feel pretty good at the moment, which none too soon, by the way, for National. Yeah. Because if we went into 2026, we were going to be in some problems.
I'll be the sort of the Grinch that stole Christmas here. I think you're right. I think there are signs, building consents are up. There's a number of things that are starting to see things move. But I tell you what, for the first time ever in a recovery, I am looking at people still very nervous about getting into play again, holding it back, retiring off some debt, maybe not spending it. You see the stuff in the Herald this morning about restaurants, people are just not coming and spending on alcohol and food. Yeah. They may be actually better off now, their job might be more secure, their income might be better, but they're saying, let's wipe off some of that mortgage debt, let's wipe off some of that, we don't need a new car this year, etc. So I think there are green shoots. I think the economy will come right, but it will be accompanied with a bit of nervousness for a while till everybody starts to feel, I can now start opening up the purse strings a bit.
Yeah, because you do hear businesses now say, oh, well, New Zealand's about to shut down for 3 months, so that's no good for me. You know, and then there's an election. So there's plenty of places to be grim along the way if people wish to be. But let's fingers crossed.
But there are signs.
Yeah,
there are signs.
We've done another year of the last two. Guys, I'll leave it there. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Maurice. Thank you, Ashley. Right, so let us do the interview. And Duncan, Hi. I thoroughly enjoy your podcast and listening to your views. Whilst I don't agree with many of your observations, I appreciate your candour. When is Stuart Nash returning to the panel? Well, I invited Stuart on. I said, come back after a week or two, and after you, his comments about what's a woman, stupid question, and he said he wants to take time out to the end of the year. I disagreed with him. I said, you don't need to do that. You'll never come back. But he's been brutalised by this, really brutalised, and so he's not coming back in a hurry. And the impacts on Stuart are actually quite big. He's lost his job. He's getting grief, things that were lined up, he's no longer part of, so he's doing it really hard. You continue with your email, Duncan. We all say stupid things. He needs to get back on the horse and stop hiding away. Yeah, that's what I said to him as well. Take a couple of weeks out. Let your wife, whack you around and beat you up and put you in the dog box, and then come back. And I think he's been away too long. He may not be able to come back now. But I think he should have been back on the horse after 2 weeks. So I told him that. That is us, folks. Remember, if you can subscribe, please do so. 3598. You text my name, Duncan, to that number, 3598, and you're hooked in. You're back. You will get a link from us and fill all the details in there, and you will become a subscriber, a paid subscriber, so you get extra content every Friday. And crucially, become part of Team Duncan, up against the mainstream media, who won't tell you much, certainly won't tell you the truth. They'll probably mislead you, and you'll be none the wiser. What we'll do is we'll go down the barrel and tell you the truth of what's really happening, the stories that they won't cover. Okay? Thanks, guys. Thanks to Brody. Thanks to Lockie as well for holding the fort and pushing it all through. I really appreciate it. Also to Ashley and Maurice, who appear every Friday. We always appreciate their loyalty and coming on the program. To the Brothers Green, for their partnership with us. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much, guys. Stay in touch. Keep going hard. I know you're doing well, so keep pushing out your product. It's a good product. And I was going to thank my mum, but there's no need to. Because she's not here right now. She's away. And it's just me. So, folks, we'll catch you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. We'll catch you then. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, sponsored by the Brothers Green. Feed your gut what it needs. Digest Gut Health Protein Powder. I use it myself. It supports natural digestion and gut health. Made with premium Canterbury-grown hemp powder and a unique blend of active kiwifruit enzyme powder and kiwifruit skin extract, offering natural prebiotics and a nutrient-rich profile to complement a balanced lifestyle. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.